Hi, Idle Time. How you doing? I got started a little early for a change, so let's see. Some professions may influence certain types of watches, but I think the interest in other types of watches beside these can coexist. Hence, we have watch addicts. I know who you're describing. Hi, Joseph. Hi, Rickon. How you doing? Uh, how is the sound okay? Anyway, let me tell you what I did between this morning and now when we had our earlier one. Hi, Koji. How are you? And BH. Oh, good. Thank you. Um, what I did is that I went and I looked at a lot of different articles that they had, and most of them they were just winging it. In other words, they'd say, "Well, this kind of profession would have this kind of watch and so forth." I don't think they didn't do any kind of research. They didn't do any, they was just sort of like, well, this watch seems good, and the watches they chose were mm. So I kept looking at, and oddly enough, I did find one that looked into the quote professions, uh, and what I found was somebody actually did some real research on the watches used by drug lords. And so I'll start off with that, then we'll take a look at some of the other ones. Hey, Junior, and hi, old bud. How are you? Okay, so these are the top six watches uh, that we've got for the profession of being a drug lord. Now, not only was it the drug lords, they were drug lords in a part of Mexico called Sinaloa. And Sinaloa, I don't know how well you know Mexico, but there's the Gulf of California. If you go down the California coast and keep on going, you run right into Baja California, which is in Mexico, just below San Diego. And the Baja is this narrow strip of land. It's like a peninsula, and then there's the Gulf, what's called the he was a Sea of Cortez. It's also called the Vermilion Sea and a lot of other things too. And then on the other side of that is the Mexican state of Sonora, which is just south of Arizona. And then if you go further south, you get into Sinaloa. And Sinaloa, you start getting into almost semi-tropical kind of area, more semi as the further south you go. Well, I just happen to know Sinaloa very well because when I used to fly, we'd fly down there. We used to fly down there. We had some clinics in a town called El Fuerte, and we had another one in a little really some poor little fly blown town called San Blas. And the dirt strips and some of the other places that we used to fly in, we'd fly in doctors and nurses and interpreters and dentists and all kinds of other medical supplies, and then we'd have our monthly clinics down there. And so I got to know it pretty well. So this was back in the late '80s and early '90s when El Chapo and some of the other guys they were they were doing a lot of business down there. So naturally, flying back and forth between Sinaloa, Mexico, whenever we crossed back across the border, we used to get questioned, and but it was really an interesting experience. And so when I found out that somebody had done some research, and and they got this from communications between the drug lords, and they came up with these watches. So let me give you the of this one occupation, the top six watches that they have. Number one, or should I go the other way? Start with number six. Um, no, I'll start with number one. Number one was Richard Milley, and I still don't get Richard Milley. He's very popular, I know, and his watches cost a fortune. Um, and they're probably pretty well done, but it's something that was always surprised me. Number two is Hublot. Now, Hublot is, I guess, the one that they're best known for is one that's called the Big Bang. And I've seen them before. They're really pretty nice watches. I was on a cruise one day, so anyway, that's number two. Number three is Rolex. So you get your drug lords out there who are sporting a Rolex. But from what I understand, they're not into Air Kings. That's my favorite. Uh, number four is Audemars Piguet, which is like, that's interesting. I don't know where. I mean, the only what they call the Holy Trinity, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, and Vacheron Constantin. The only one that was among the top 10 was the Audemars Piguet, and I think it was the Royal Oak that was the favorite, maybe some of the offshores. Next, this one was really a surprising, and I think they just declared bankruptcy, and that was Romain Jerome, which I was a very big surprise to hear that. But they were one of the big ones. That was number five, I think. And finally was Urwerk, and that was the fifth one. So the thing is, though, is that if you look at that collection, other than Rolex and Audemars Piguet, the other ones are not as common among, we'll say, collectors as a lot of these other ones. So that I thought was sort of interesting. Okay, from dose number two. Oh, okay. This is a nice way to help weather the side effects from dose number two. You had side effects. Well, at least you got dose number two. I hope everybody else is getting their shots too. That's good to hear. Okay, let's see. Hey, Thomas, how are you? IWC watches are only bought by doctors, oh bud. That was sort of a funny thing because the this one person, I guess he's one of these people who writes. They refer to it as gear. One of these gear experts. He decided that was for engineers. I don't know why. Trying to think. Most of the guys I knew who were more of the used to live in the world that I lived in, sort of high tech, they'd be more likely to end up with an Apple Watch or something like that than than kind of watches that we like. Oh, let's see. Hi, CW Greg. How are you? How are things in Germany? And Tim. Hi, Tim. Tim, you seem to get around a lot. Hi, Raj. Hublots and diamond-crusted Rolexes are the usual domain of drug barons, as they are with pimps, but don't ask how I know. Okay, I won't ask. Let's see. From the pure practicality, I steer towards small, 36 millimeters or less, slim, 10 millimeters or less dress watches, so as not to be aware of it when practicing. Plus, I have the wrist of a 5-year-old girl. Okay. Well, Kenji or Koji, the advantage to that is you can find some great ones, great deals, some great buys on some of these watches with the smaller dimensions. The real drug lords are big pharma executives, and they wear IWC. I hope the IWCs that they wear are as are the ones where IWC really doesn't tell them that's ETA that they've got on, or Salida with a phony name that IWC gave them. Hi, A. Willis. How you doing? How are things in Wales? Ha, Javi. How you doing, man? Um, well, anyway, so this is, but the interesting thing was that in looking at the other professions, nobody had done any real research except on the drug lords. And they had all of these citations and stuff like it was a real research project. And they also specified it was only Sinaloa, so it was my guys, or at least the people I used to hang out with. It was really funny. For the most part, the group I was with was called, two of them. One was called Flying Samaritans, and one was called Liga. Everybody would leave us alone, and we had a letter that we carried with us from, I think it was from the Secretary of Health, and that was because we were taking care of a big hunk of, pretty much very, very rural part of Mexico, where they really didn't have too many services. And some days people would, literally ride on horseback for a couple days to come and visit one of our clinics. So it was something when, flying. I don't know if any of you guys have flown, but after a while you get tired of boring holes in the sky and you want to do something a little more interesting, a little more useful. And flying down, I love flying to Mexico. I love it down there. In fact, I'd rather go down to either Baja or some of the places that we went on the coast than Hawaii. Even those were really wonderful experiences. Oh, anyway, so enough of that with my adventures without the drug lords. Uh, Hi, Ronan. How you doing? 2 p.m. ET. You can on YouTube channel watch Talk with the Punters. Will be my full collection review. Rick, I'm on it, man. We're all set for that at 2 o'clock. I'll be there, and we're gonna help. I'm gonna help rake you over the coals. Give you a good review, Rick. Let's see. I think Escobar liked Patek Philippe, or was it Rolex? I don't know what Poro Escobar. He was. I don't know. A lot of these guys, they started off with one thing. El Chapo he kept escaping. I mean, he's in an American prison now, and he's got this gorgeous girlfriend, and I think she may have gotten in trouble too. These guys were billionaires; they could buy any watch they wanted to. Um, hey, Beto, how you doing? What do you think of the Tudor Double Date? I think it's a underrated watch. Do you mean the Tudor GMT? Is that the one you're talking about? Uh, Beto, if you're talking about the Tudor GMT, I really like it. But I'm not sure what you mean. Wait a minute, that wouldn't be double date. That's a GMT. That's dual time. Okay. Raj, it was. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to meet and chat with Pablo about watches. I think he was okay. So well, anyway, so that's one occupation, and the interesting thing is that when you consider all of the watches, I mean, none of these were FP Journes, none were Carrie Wooten Laurens. Some of the other ones that Laurent Ferrier and some of them are Roger Smith, or they could have afforded that though. That's the interesting. They could have got a Roger Smith. They could have probably got a George Daniels if they ever went bidding after one. Uh, so um, so let's talk about some other professions that we may be able to identify watching. At least from my experiences with my doctors that I go to, they're all over the map. This morning I mentioned the guy with the anesthesiologist who had the Rolex Yachtmaster 2. But my other doctors, they're not. One of them likes Shinola, which I think is sort of interesting. The guy that I go for my otology or something like that, some kind of hearing doctor, and he just is crazy about Shinolas, and so that's cool. And the other ones are they have nice watches, but um they're not like not real expensive watches. Or big named or something like that. They'll have a Citizen or something like that. So I don't think they give it two thoughts really. Now maybe when they go to some doctors convention, they not one of them has had a jumping second, so that's something that I don't know too much about either. Hey, Kaz, how you doing? Uh, Tudor Glamour Double Date. Beto, I'm not familiar with that Tudor, but I will be. And but thanks for bringing it up. I don't know anything about it. Okay, so what are some other? So that one is out. I've seen, like I said, there is some sort of thing on for Wall Street. There's a little more competition for the higher end watches. I mentioned that one guy I think was he was a broker and he had the Patek Philippe Nautilus, but who else? The guy that I buy cars from, he's got a pretty decent one. He has a Rolex and he's got a couple other ones that are decent watches. How about you guys? Any other ones that you can think of for professions? I mean, those are the doctors I know. Trying to think of some other people I visit regularly. I can tell you at least university professors that I spent a lot of time with. They, they have no idea. I was the only one. That was when I used to wear my overseas before I retired, and they didn't know an overseas from a G-Shock. So, and they really didn't care. It just was something that they weren't into. But it was interesting that when I talked to them about it, before they could escape my long explanations about that, they they were interested. They want to know why, what was the attraction to that, and why did you like that, and so forth. Hi, Rohit, how you doing? Wesley, how are you? My accountant is 73 and wears a solid gold quartz watch from the 70s. Gentle like watch. That's cool. My accountant, I rarely go see him. I've been with the same accountant for about almost 25 years. And I used to go over there and see him in person, but now everything is I either mail him something. He just lives in a couple towns over, and so it's not a. This last time I went, and I simply handed some financial stuff to his secretary, so I really didn't get a chance to talk to him. Let's see. Hi, Young Juan Pack. I hope I'm not saying it too terribly wrong. I used to be an academic, and you're right. None of my colleagues cared about watches. Yeah, that was, I tell you now, the pilots, when I used to fly, we didn't talk about, I don't remember any too much talk about watches, except at the pilot shop they had that it was at my where my they call them FBOs. They always had a bunch of Breitlings and I think Tag Heuers and Breitlings, and I thought they were the best watches in the world. This is funny. Back then, if you've ever had an airplane, if you've ever flown, it's more expensive than watches, and yet I saw the price of a Breitling or a Tag Heuer, which wasn't that bad. But I thought, oh, that's just way too much. I wouldn't spend that much on a watch. On the other hand, if we need some new avionics for our plane, or we wanted to have something on it, done or fixed, we'd spend a fortune on that and not think twice. We spent $500 a month just for the saving up for the annual we had on it. It was really interesting kind of thing because you're thinking about money is all has to do with your airplane. Nothing, some of these other things we didn't think about too much. Hey, Forbin, sleeves count too. Are men who wear short sleeves less likely to wear dress watches? Yeah, that's a good point. If what you wear would make a difference. Just found Escobar's watch online. Lo and behold, it was a diamond encrusted Rolex. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me so much. There's a lot of bling. Excuse me. Some of the ones I've seen a lot of stuff with celebrities, and there are a few that you wouldn't expect to be very, very sharp watch collectors. There's some, I think one of the, I may be wrong, but one of the Rolling Stones, I think, has a really very well chosen collection. And or maybe he's a member of Kiss, one of those two groups. But on the other hand, too, there are some other actors who seem to have dubious choices. So, this is another thing too. Uh, you don't have. I mean, if you have a lot of money, you have more options. Put it that way, but that doesn't mean you have good taste. So there's or even really much knowledge about watches, except you can buy a Rolex and put a bunch of jewels on it, but it's still a Rolex. I mean, it's not an Air King, but it'll probably be one of those. Sleeve. There was an interesting article on sleeves. There's there's a shirt maker uh, in New York that I like, and on the sleeves, what they'll do is they'll make the sleeve slightly shorter, so your watch comes out. So on your left arm, you can have your monogram or whatever else you want, but it just will sort of pull up and out come your sleeve. I had this sweatshirt specially made for that, and so that's how that works. Tudor, okay, with the big date is beautiful. You can get a 15% discount on that one. Okay, hi Velvia man, how you doing? It died about 2 years later. Okay, whoops, I'm missing something in the discussions here. I have worked in oil and gas for most of my career, and from the field level to senior executives, not many of my peers care about watches. I see an occasional Explorer sub or GMT master. Okay, so but that is a brand no um, of watch of Rolex, different kinds of Rolexes they might use. My brother was a petroleum geologist, worked out in places like Permian Basin and Midland, and I don't know what they. He simply wasn't that much into watches, but I think you're right. They're not wasn't something that was too interesting. Hey, Mark, how you doing, man? Um, Okay. The diamonds on Escobar's Rolexes are aftermarket garbage. That's too bad. It was, there's this one place that's supposed it's an auction house, and they're supposed to have government recovered materials from drug raids and other kinds of crimes. And I I did some stuff there, and it seemed that most of a lot of the watches they had, especially the Rolexes, were the 36 millimeter. They seem to have a lots of 36 millimeters, some of them with a lot of bling on them. But I wonder whether they were really recovered from a government raid or simply some leftover stock that people wanted. Some of the newer, bigger ones. I don't know. It could have been. They had. Oh, I tell you, a guy who had sort of an interesting collection I didn't think much of was Bernard Madoff. The guy that made off with everybody's money, who basically died recently in prison. But his collection was, this guy he can have a lot of money, but doesn't mean you're going to get something too interesting horologically. Uh, Koji, that's a great thing. You wish you could give poor people money and rich people taste. Hey, Mark, 5493. The current drummer for Kiss is an astute avid watch collector. That's who I think I think that's the guy I'm thinking of, Mark. Yeah. It was, I mean, you got to, especially with Kiss, because they have these wild outfits and stuff. And yet, a very astute watch collector. There's another guy I know who used to be in a band who has a pretty decent watch collection. Some Italians actually wear the watch on top of their sleeve. Yes, yes, yes. That was there was this specific guy who started that, and you're right. He would wear it on top of his sleeve, and in a way that makes a lot of sense because you don't have to pull your sleeve up for that. Hey, Foreman. And then their Italian auto tycoon, uh, Angelelli, who wears his watch outside. That may have been the guy. I'm not sure. Hey, Indrajit, how you doing? Came but better late than never. That's okay. I've been worrying about you. I hope you guys stay safe and in good health. Uh, what are your thoughts on Richard Milley? I heard a story about him throwing a high complication watch across the room in front of some friends, proving how robust and well made his watch was. Thomas, I don't. My understanding was that he didn't make his own movements. I could be wrong about that. He certainly did a lot of work on them, and the skeletonized. But there's never been anything about his watches that I say, wow, that's a real horological feat. Nor do I don't. Can you think of any watches that he won a Grand Prix award for? I can't. He may have, and I may have missed it, but there's his watches are very high priced. I know some guys who think the world of them. I don't, and that's just me. But there are other watches that people like that I don't care for, and there are watches I like that a lot of people wouldn't, wear to a rat killing. So, oh, let's see. Looking to buy. Tim G. What are you looking to buy? Hi, Harry Law. John Mayer has a nice collection. Okay. Dr. A and B, how you doing? I think the concept of a dress watch and statement in which evolution is more refined nowadays than before. It could be. I don't know. What I like is a watch. To see somebody with a watch that I don't know anything about, whether it's expensive or not expensive, but they are so happy with their watch. They enjoy it so much that's a kind of sort of special value that I think that a watch has. If you can have a watch like that, because there's certain watches I really like a lot, but they're not my favorite watches, even though they may be buying for very expensive ones. So Muhammad Ali wore a very small Cartier tank. Yeah, when Muhammad Ali was at his height, so watches were a little smaller back then. Um, Back in what was in the 60s and 70s, when he did most of his fighting. Richard Milley uses Valjoux 5401. Thank you, Indrajit. I knew it was something like that. Oh, wait a minute. It's a Valjoux 5401. Well, that's more like it. But I think he uses more than just that. I've heard of different kinds of movements that he makes. Vaucheur, ever since I got my own Vaucheur, just the movement, I like him even more. I think this is a Parmigiani and has a Vaucheur movement in it. Michel Parmigiani design, but it's put together by Vaucheur. Gianni Angeli, that's who it is, oh bud. Yeah, that was the guy that he sort of started he was a fad among some people. I don't know if it's still a fad or not. Would Richard Milley strap a watch on an outboard motor and put it in the water for a while and see if it still worked like a Timex? I don't know. Takes a licking and keeps on ticking. It could be. Okay, well, let's think about some other professions. Uh, I think, if you have a kind of profession or kind of work you do, you sort of bang things around a lot. It would, something that would be like, more like a G-Shock would make a lot more sense. Um, my brother's when he was doing petroleum work out in Permian Basin, those guys were, out there with the wildcatters. That was a rough environment, and so it would be something that you wouldn't want to wear a good watch to, but something a good tough watch. A good tough everyday watch is a Seiko. That's I think it's a reliable watch, and they don't cost a lot, and but they work well. That's one. Hey, Daniel, how you doing? What did I miss? There will be a recording soon after. Let's see. I think he could probably make a watch that does that for the money he charges. Yeah, I wonder. The thing is, though, it's a very popular watch. I mean, you take a look at Rolexes. People are, lined up around the block for a watch, and I don't know if it has the how much horology goes into that. You get a good solid watch. But man, I tell you, the number of people waiting to get one now. Here's the funny thing: you take a company like H. Moser, and for quite a long time, they've had some really great watches, but they've been just recognized. Then one of them takes off, and suddenly there's a waiting list to get a green center second streamliner. So funny things happen. Uh, I did mention too. I called. Vacheron Constantin about overseas, and they said they're all on waiting lists, all the overseas now. Whereas back in 2016, when their new ones came out, I went down to talk to them about it. No problem, and I was interested in the brown one at the time. And when the brown ones came in, they gave me a call and said, "Hey, the brown ones are in." But by that time, I don't know, I was thinking of other watches. So. Uh, Hi, Chiwan. How are you? Streamliner. Yeah, love that watch. The question should be for those who know and like watches, given their professions, which watches do they prefer? Yeah. Um, I got like a lot of them, a lot of guys, they don't care too much about them, or they, and more, if I really want to know the exact time, I'll take a look at my iPhone. I'll just give it a tap and it'll come up with a time right away. Um, but the thing that's nice about a watch is just one glance and you're good to go. Uh, let's see. Boom, my time is up, so it's frying pan time. My usual frying pan warnings aren't here today, but I got to run. See if you can find some other ones. I think it's sort of fun to, in terms of watch fun things with watches. And tomorrow at 2 o'clock, check out the punters. We're gonna have a good time there. I think. Take care. Okay. Yes. Dr. A and B, you're right about pilots. What they need now, what pilots need is at least something with Zulu time on it. Okay, you guys, everybody take care and be safe. And hope to see you at the punters tomorrow.